Good afternoon and bonsoir. C'est vraiment un grand plaisir d'être ici avec tout le monde. Rob Oliphant, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Anita Anand, and I'm here today on behalf of Anita Anand to acknowledge and to let you know that we have introduced legislation today in the House of Commons, which will be known as Bill C-35, which will strengthen Canada's regime for forced labour and ensuring that Canadian goods and products, goods that come into Canada are free of forced labour and are fairly produced, and so that consumers can rest at night knowing that they are buying goods which have been fairly produced. Canada stands firmly against forced labour. It's a form of exploitation and a very flagrant abuse of human rights. It's unacceptable, and it is a moral imperative that Canada continue to address it. This is not a new issue for Canada. Obviously, we have been a leading regime on addressing the issue of forced labour. However, we have identified that there are gaps in our regime, and this bill will not only strengthen it, but actually make some very significant changes as we are doing it. Il est également impératif que le Canada défende un commerce équitable et ouvert, car nous savons que le travail forcé crée des conditions de concurrence inégales qui nuisent aux entreprises canadiennes. Nous savons que les Canadiens ne veulent pas voir dans nos magasins des produits issus du travail forcé. In 2020, Canada became the second country in the world to prohibit importing goods that were processed with forced labor. This legislation will build on that foundation and on the progress that we have made. It's a new approach. We hope it to be effective, transparent, and enforceable. It's important to note, I think, that this legislation follows on our agreement when we established CUSMA to be in line with Mexico and the United States on these issues. However, we will continue to be a leader. This will be a made-in-Canada solution to an international problem. We're also following very closely what is going on in the European Union, and the EU will have measures taking place in 2027, which we want to assure that we are in line with. This is all part of a twofold approach. One, to ensure that businesses in Canada can compete with a level playing field. We do not want dumping of cheaper materials, cheaper goods into Canada that are produced with forced labour. It's unfair to businesses. It's unfair to small, medium, and large businesses in Canada who have to compete. It is also an imperative that Canadians have given us that as we are opening trade, which we are doing, the Prime Minister has been very clear that we're expanding our export activities. We want to ensure that it is not only a pragmatic approach, but it's principled. And so as we do that, we will ensure that the goods that are coming into Canada are not made with any forced labour. We'll be doing that through a system which will enable the Minister of Foreign Affairs to establish a list of goods which have the potential, the possibility that they are created or made with forced labour, and also indicate regions or countries where that is a possibility. So it'll be a discrete list. The Minister will obviously be engaged in a whole-of-government approach where there will be people feeding into that system through our network of offices around the world, and the Minister will create that list based on knowledge and information that we have at our department. At the same time, that will then shift the burden, and we are recognizing that. The onus is now the CBSA officers will have that list, and when goods come into this country, the importer will be required to give evidence that these goods, while they may be on the list, are not made with forced labour. There will be resources for CBSA to ensure that our borders are protected and safe to do that. It is an ongoing process that we will be doing. The legislation's new. I saw it last night as I prepared for today. So we will be engaging this legislation over the summer. It's now introduced. It will go to a second reading. It will be voted on at second reading and then go to committee for further study. And we will be listening to comments that we have from Canadians that I think will appreciate this particular piece of legislation at this time. Je tiens de remercier tous mes collègues dans tous les partis d'avoir la conversation de cet enjeu. Pas dans les dernières 6 années, je pense. C'est nécessaire d'avoir les conversations avec tous les partis, d'avoir un projet de loi qui est ferme, qui est transparent et qui est ouvert pour les Canadiens. So, merci beaucoup, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
Why are you aligning with the U.S. and making companies prove that their products were not made with forced labor? Why not go that route?
So what we are doing is a made in Canada solution. Be very clear that we are obviously have an obligation under CUSMA to make sure that we have a transparent approach to that. The approach that we've had, I would say, has been a robust approach. I have said that a number of times in the House of Commons, but we've also identified gaps, and the Prime Minister has been very clear that he wants those gaps stopped so that we can show the whole world, but particularly show Canadians, that goods coming to this country are free from forced labor. So what happens is this Made in Canada solution will give the Minister the authority to establish that list of goods that have the potential, or there's a history, or there's an indication that there could be forced labor, and correspond that list with regions or countries where it may come from. So we believe that this legislation will, I'm not using the word harmonize, but will be in line with expectations which are coming from Mexico, coming from the United States, but also with our European partners and anybody who would want to do business with Canada.
Why not match the U.S., though? What issues did you find with that system that you didn't move ahead with it?
With the American system? I've not been engaged on the American system. I've looked at the Canadian system. I've been following it since 2020 very closely. We have our own regime around tariffs. We have our own Canada Border Services Agency. And so this will be, we think, a complementary or an equivalence that will satisfy any concerns that any country might have about doing business with Canada.
You said that list was discrete. Is it a public list, like, of countries and regions, like, so everyone can see what countries and regions are flagged, or is it just for CB?
The list will be an order in council. So the minister will request an order in council on those lists, and we'll have all the usual publications of any order in council.
Monsieur Oliphant, pourquoi vous agissez maintenant après les menaces américaines? Pourquoi agir maintenant alors que les États-Unis menacent le Canada?
Non, c'est vraiment c'est le temps maintenant, c'est juste le temps correct. C'est d'avoir un processus organique qui est une évolution depuis 2020 et après le projet de loi S211. Et maintenant, il y a un projet de loi qui est sur le Fall Economic Statement 2024, mais c'est pas complet. Mais maintenant, c'est le temps d'avoir un autre régime, de faire des problèmes dans l'autre. Il y a des problèmes. C'est vraiment, c'est clair. C'est pas parfait, mais maintenant, c'est l'opportunité d'avoir un système plus rigide, plus transparent, plus ouvert, et c'est plus clair pour les entreprises au Canada d'avoir une liste, c'est clair.
Mais le Bloc québécois avait déjà fait des propositions par le passé. Pourquoi ne pas avoir pris ce que le Bloc proposait par le passé? Pourquoi agir maintenant alors qu'il y a des menaces américaines?
Je pense que le projet de loi du Bloc québécois, c'est une bonne proposition. Oui, c'est un bon projet de loi, mais ce n'est pas exactement le même. Je pense que c'est les mêmes enjeux, les mêmes possibilités d'avoir le même régime, mais une chose un petit peu différente, d'avoir le même objectif.
Can I get you in English on the threat of U.S. tariffs based on forced labor? How did that impact this bill or the timing of it?
So the reality is we are in ongoing conversations with the United States. This is not a secret. We've all been following this very clearly. We've also seen Section 301 tariffs that have been imposed or threatened to be imposed. But that is not the principal reason we are doing this now. 2024, we had the fall economic statement where we proposed legislation of this sort. That did not happen. We had an election. We had a variety of things. However, over the last 6 years, Canadians have continued to ask for stronger legislation. And so this is what we're doing. We believe at the same time, concurrently, this will satisfy any concerns that any other country would have, including the United States.
Do you have any indication on that? That this will be enough for the United States? I'm wondering, they brought in tariffs on fentanyl. You brought in the helicopters. The tariffs stayed in place. So will this be enough?
Minister LeBlanc is in constant conversation with his counterpart. These conversations are ongoing. I'm not privy to those conversations. As I look at this law, as I read it today, I am very satisfied that it will be the foundation for a good relationship with the United States.
This list you're proposing, is it going to name specific products? Is it going to name types of products? Is it going to name specific regions? Like, how is that going to be structured? Is it going to say all products, for example, from parts of China are presumed to be made with forced labor? Or is it going to say all tires or solar panels? How is it going to work?
This will start with the actual products that have had indications that we have intelligence, obviously. We have intelligence, we have sources, and we have foreign missions in countries all around the world. We will take that evidence, and we'll take evidence from public safety, we'll take evidence from our counterparts in trade, we'll take evidence that comes to us from industry, from anybody who has these concerns. This evidence will go into a list. The products by category will be listed. I mean, the legislation you can see, and I only have the legislation as well in front of me. We'll have those lists, and then weighing counterpoint to it will be regions of countries where those products are most likely to have indications that there could be forced labor.
So all of the above.
Canada has been criticized for, having a bad track record of proving there's forced labor. So how are you going to come up with a list that says we suspect this is forced labor and we're going to keep these products out? Like,
so the current system has put the onus on CBSA, which you will remember under the Harper regime was allowed to atrophy. So we have been rebuilding CBSA with 1,000 new CBSA officers being employed over this next period to ensure this work is done. However, they have not had the resources, nor have they had the ability to do it the way we think it would be most effective. We now have a targeted approach as opposed to a container approach. So as opposed to containers coming in and officers needing to look at the container, what we have is a list of goods, and we'll know what is on the manifest in those containers. And if there's something in those containers that is on the list, then the importer has the responsibility to say, here's the evidence that these come from bona fide factories, bona fide labor standards are in place, and the work that is being done is at a fair level. And then Canadian businesses will be able to have a level playing field to compete. So it's shifting this from sort of an approach that is in Newfoundland they would say a scattershot approach, to a targeted approach to say this is what we will be looking for. It also gives a heads up to importers ahead of the game to make sure they do due diligence, not just to report what they're doing, but they will do due diligence to not bring in goods that may fail to meet that test. And I think that's what they actually want to.
There's a shipment of frozen seafood coming from China. What are the steps to that and what would be different? Would it be held? Would it be detained? Like, how would it work differently?
I worry about getting into those sort of hypotheticals. I don't know what the list will be. What the list will be clear. The list will be available in public, and importers will know. And then those steps will be taken, hopefully proactively by the importers before this happens. So they'll do their due diligence because they don't want to be left with shipments they'll have to send back.
Dernière question en français. Quelles répercussions vous pensez que ce projet de loi va avoir sur l'état des négociations entre le Canada et les États-Unis pour l'ASEUM?
J'ai l'asthme. Je pense que c'est les négociations entre les États-Unis et le Canada est ongoing. C'est vraiment un processus avec M. Leblanc et le Premier ministre et toutes les choses. C'est une équipe avec le Global Affairs et les autres. Et c'est une conversation qui continue. Pendant maintenant, c'est avec M. Leblanc et son homologue. Toujours. C'est juste cet enjeu, cet projet-là, c'est une petite, d'une grande conversation avec toutes les choses dans les négociations.
So are there no additional resources for CBSA to change how they're doing things?
That'll be a larger government question. We'll bring in the law. We'll make sure it's enforced.
That you're acknowledging today. You mentioned there's a gap the government acknowledges exists, and the Prime Minister wants us to close it. What exactly is that gap here?
The gap is that we have heard from Canadians that they have a fear that they are getting goods that may be made with forced labor, and that we've only had maybe 50 containers that have been looked at. We've had 2 that have been found to have goods made with forced labor. We know we can do better.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
La Cour suprême du Canada a rendu une décision concernant le bilinguisme au Nouveau-Brunswick. La personne qui occupe le poste de lieutenant-gouverneur doit pouvoir exercer ses fonctions dans les 2 langues officielles. Donc, qu'est-ce que vous pensez de cette décision?
Mais vous venez m'apprendre cette décision-là, et je pense que c'est une bonne chose. Le Nouveau-Brunswick, c'est la province bilingue. Il faut que les gens qui s'occupent des postes officiels doivent exercer ces pouvoirs, leurs fonctions dans les 2 langues.
Puis est-ce que le gouvernement fédéral devrait faire quelque chose avec ça?
On devrait nommer des lieutenants-gouverneurs qui parlent français et anglais.
Merci beaucoup.
De rien.
Ah, puis, M. Fergus, j'aimerais vous demander, j'aimerais vous faire commenter cette histoire. Vous avez sans doute vu dans le droit, nos collègues ont parlé d'une bénévole là, qui ne peut pas aider les enfants dans la cour d'école parce qu'elle porte un hijab. Je comprends qu'on parle de politique québécoise, mais quand même, ça se passe possiblement dans votre circonscription.
Oui.
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de cette situation-là, de ne pas pouvoir participer à des activités scolaires pour aider les enfants alors qu'on porte un hijab?
C'est ridicule. Ridicule. Ça démontre la stupidité de ces provisions de cette loi. Les bénévoles sont des bénévoles. Le gouvernement a le droit d'exercer, même si je suis en désaccord, avec leurs employés. Pas des bénévoles, ça n'a pas de bon sens.
Merci beaucoup. M. Deltell, j'aimerais vous poser des questions sur un panoplie de sujets. On aime ça pouvoir vous parler. D'abord, le G7, M. Carney est là-bas. Est-ce que, selon vous, il devrait faire front commun avec M. Macron face à M. Trump?
Bon, le discours de Davos définissait justement que les pays moyens, disons ça comme ça, devaient davantage collaborer ensemble. Bon, évidemment, si on dit que la France est un pays moyen, on vient de déclencher une guerre atomique avec la France. Évidemment, je caricature, on l'aura compris. Le gaullisme ayant bien établi la force de la France. On est toujours plus fort, évidemment, quand on a des alliances, mais ce qu'il faut, c'est avoir des résultats. Alors, c'est bien beau les paroles, c'est bien beau les discours, mais ce qui manque à M. Carney depuis plus d'1 an qu'il est en poste, ce sont les réalisations. Alors, les paroles sont formidables, mais les réalisations sont minces jusqu'à maintenant.
Puis pensez-vous qu'il y a une occasion de faire débloquer les choses avec le G7?
Bien, c'est sûr que quand vous avez 7 personnes qui sont rassemblées autour de la table, dont l'individu en question qui est actuellement au 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, c'est sûr que ça permet d'avoir de meilleures discussions directes, franches, directement. Mais on sait très bien qu'évidemment, on ne contrôlera jamais M. Trump. On peut contrôler ce qu'on fait, par exemple, chez nous, et là-dessus, on a des griefs au premier ministre.
Puis concernant excusez-moi, là.
Concernant la Coupe du Monde, je souhaite que le Canada gagne cet après-midi.
Non. Hey, vous me faites rire.
Oui, je vois ça.
Je voulais vous parler de plusieurs autres sujets, mais là...
Eh bien, on s'y reprendra.
Non, monsieur
parce que moi, je vais me faire gronder, par exemple, si je suis pas en retard.
Attendez, laissez-moi juste voir mes notes, là. Ah oui, c'est ça. Au niveau Brunswick, la Cour suprême a décidé que le lieutenant-gouverneur doit être bilingue, doit parler dans les 2 langues officielles.
Ouais.
Décision de la Cour suprême. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de ça?
Ça appartient au Nouveau-Brunswick, évidemment, bien que ça réfère à une institution fédérale, c'est-à-dire le lieutenant-gouverneur relève du fédéral, bien entendu, mais ça appartient davantage aux gens du Nouveau-Brunswick de commenter ça. Moi, je serais toujours fâché après M. Trudeau d'avoir nommé une gouverneure générale qui ne parlait pas les 2 langues officielles.
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez du projet de loi qui sera déposé éventuellement pour le travail forcé, pour l'enlever des chaînes d'approvisionnement? Comment vous voyez ça dans un contexte de négociation de la
Oui, bien, c'est sûr que ça fait partie des choses qu'on doit faire attention. Le Canada doit être très vigilant par rapport à ça. Alors, à nouveau, ça rappelle les belles paroles du premier ministre, mais les actions ne suivent pas. Nous, on est évidemment férocement contre tout impact concernant le travail forcé. C'est que M. Carney s'est fait élire en disant que la menace venait de la Chine. Et voilà que quelques mois plus tard, il s'est rendu en Chine comme si de rien n'était. À nouveau, les paroles de M. Carney sont envoûtantes, mais les résultats ne sont toujours pas là.
Puis qu'est-ce qu'on devrait avoir dans ce projet de loi-là?
Bien, on va voir qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire. Nous, ce qu'on souhaite, c'est qu'évidemment, les ententes soient rentables pour le Canada et qu'on mette davantage d'emphase sur le Canada. Comme citoyens, on a des choses à faire aussi. C'est sûr que si on continue à ne pas acheter des produits canadiens, on peut être mis à rude épreuve. Mais ce qu'on souhaite, en bout de ligne, c'est que ça soit bon pour le Canada et que ça respecte les enjeux de protection des droits de l'homme, des droits de la personne, pardon. Donc, nous, c'est sûr qu'on souhaite que les ententes soient respectueuses des droits de la personne. Et force est d'admettre que le travail forcé, c'est tout sauf ça.
Merci beaucoup, M.
C'est moi qui vous remercie.
Bon week-end.